Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Tristan Cabello, and I'm the Associate Director for the Master of Liberal Arts, the MLA, at Johns Hopkins University. Tonight is the third event of our MLA speaker series, which will last all fall semester. In this series, we will showcase the diversity of courses that our students can take in the program, and also the research that our faculty is doing. As you know, the Master of Liberal Arts is an interdisciplinary program. You can therefore take different courses in different disciplines such as music, literature, history, sociology, and anthropology, for example. And you can also take courses in environmental studies, as the talk tonight will show. Our guest tonight is Professor Eglute Trinkauskaite. She teaches courses in environmental studies in the Master of Liberal Arts. She's also a full-time faculty in the Department of Humanistic Studies at the Maryland Institute College of Art. Her field of teaching and research is the history of religions with a focus on Native American and other indigenous traditions, ecology, and the materiality of religion. Dr. Trinkauskaite will give a 30-35-minute presentation, and we will have, right after that, time for some questions. Eglute, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tristan and Peter, for beautiful introduction, and thank you for having me here. It's a real honor to work with MLA students. And today I'll just be sharing my latest research on Lithuanian folk healing tradition that I'm familiar with, and making new connections through my research to not only Lithuanian context, but broader context. So the presentation is called Soul, Breath, Wind in the Lithuanian context, and I could not stay just in Lithuanian context, so I went beyond it as well. So I'll begin with sharing my screen. I have some slides, and all photos are by Lithuanian photographer Marius Čepulis. I am grateful for his permission to be able to share his photos. I'm just going to find my slide. So Lithuanian folk healers who use verbal healing charms will often use the technique of harnessing the breath. In a comparative context, this technique resonates with Vedic understanding of the cosmic winds in the human body. In Lithuanian, the oldest living language related to Sanskrit, the word for the soul, dūšia, vėlė, is connected to the word used to mean both breath and wind, Vėjas, which have the connotations of wind, breath, fog, steam, and the cobweb-like transparency. The Hindu deity Vayu, god of the wind and breath, is closely related to the Baltic wind deities, the Lithuanian gods Vėjas, Vėjapatis, and the Latvian god Veja Mate. Lithuanian verbal healing charms suggest a close connection between atmospheric air and bodily breath, adding a broader understanding to the meaning of breath in specific indigenous ontologies and epistemologies. The Lithuanian conception of the individual soul breath, dūšia, dūkas, challenges the customary Western opposition between spirit and matter. Sometimes the forms of the souls of the dead, vėlės, are described as wind, breath, fog, steam, as being transparent cobweb. In the Middle Ages, it was believed that spirits could form a body by thickening the air and appear as dogs, cats, and other animals. Various spirits, as well as the dead, however, are described in terms of the air. The connection between the soul and the air is expressed in the function of breath. The vital powers of the body and the soul itself are manifested through breathing. In Lithuanian, the soul of the dead vėlė is associated with the root of the word wind, Vėjas. In the vėlė, as in terms of describing the soul of other Indo-Europeans, root words alluding to wind, air, and breath are very common. The nature of an individual soul breath, dūšia, is connected to cosmic reality. The inner soul breath is the microcosmos of the macrocosmic element of air. Concentrated soul breath has the power to restore and change through movement. It is homologous to the power of wind. Traditional healing approaches illness holistically through actions on the physical body. Lithuanian verbal healing charms offer remedies through a blend of indigenous cosmology and Christian theology. In structure, many indigenous charms have two layers: Christian, pre-Christian Baltic, and Christian. The charms invoke the cosmos, the sun, the moon, the wind, and often seal the charm formula with a repetition of Hail Mary. The holding of breath and counting numbers are significant techniques in Lithuanian verbal healing charms. Breath is the animating spirit. Counting while holding breath requires physical strength and concentration. These prayers must be muttered quietly under the breath without letting out any air. A strong person must do it. Concentrated breath exhaled over butter, cream, salt, or water infuses them with intentions of the folk healer. This projected action is the structural foundation of Lithuanian healing charms. When considering Lithuanian healing charms in a broader context of Vedic literature, human breath, just like storm gods, has a similar function to clear or to fight certain conditions. Folk healing instructions describe a close relationship between a soul, vėlė, dūšia, and breath. When saying a verbal charm, one is not allowed to draw a breath. It is necessary to hold breath without recovering soul breath in one soul breath. Must hold breath soul, not to let out steam, not letting go of breath, not changing soul. One absolutely must not exhale from the beginning of the intention or charm until blowing out. However, harnessing breath technique does not apply to the concluding Christian prayer. In speaking it, one may let out a breath. Soul breath wind homology is based on pre-Christian understanding of the cosmos. Later in the presentation, I will make connections to the Vedic understanding of bodily and atmospheric winds. Withholding of breath connects to another stage of verbal charming. After reciting a formula, one must blow onto the patient, the ailing body part, or some other substance. The healers say that one must blow steam from their mouth, sigh directly into the wound, blow air from one's mouth onto an aching tooth, blow one's steam 3 times. If one talks onto water or another substance, one needs to blow directly into the bottle or through both hands placed on the bottle in the shape of a tube while reciting the words. When verbally charming a patient from a distance and through the wind, one needs to blow in the direction of the patient. To protect oneself from a snake when going to a forest, after sighing, one needs to blow onto the ground. One blows 3 times, sometimes 9, sometimes 27. Often, while repeating the incantation, one has to blow multiple times. Lithuanian verbal healing charms add to broader examination of the significance of breath in specific ontologies and epistemologies. In conventional Western thought, discussion of breath gives rise to the dualism between body and soul. In the comparative context, the Latin word anima expresses spirit as breath, associating it with the element air. Related terms include breathing, life, soul, spirit, vital principle, and wind or breeze. The wind as a force in the macrocosmos corresponds to the spirit in the microcosmos. In Greek and Indian folk beliefs, the wind is considered to be the soul bearer. There is a clear similarity between Lithuanian folk healers and Vedic techniques of controlling and withholding breath. The linguistic proximity of the Sanskrit deity of wind and breath, Vayu, to Lithuanian Vėjas, wind, is unmistakable. Ancient Indian Vedic sources articulate the relationship between human breath and cosmic wind clearly, as this connection was paramount to the ancient medical thinkers. Wind was the main empirical indicator of live breath in the human body. It was called vata and vayu in nature and prana in living beings. On the one hand, wind was revered and worshipped as a powerful deity so that it would bestow its life-giving powers on humans, and on the other hand, it fully understood its cosmic potential could be harnessed and controlled for humankind's benefit. Nature's wind was limitless and unrestricted. It could only be worshipped as a mighty, untamed deity. However, that same force in humans was limited. When it entered the body, it was confined there until it left to unite with its source, the cosmic wind. The Vedic epistemology elaborates on 5 bodily winds responsible for the functioning of the human body. They were prana, udana, samana, vayana, and apana. Not aggravated and situated in their respective locations, the breaths perform their own functions, and by them the body is maintained free of disease. If they are situated in the wrong paths or become aggravated, they afflict the body with diseases derived from their particular locations and functions and quickly destroy life. 2 Vedic sources pay careful attention to wind disorders based on their locations and functions. For example, when aggravated, prana, which is located in the mouth, causes disorders such as hiccups and difficulty breathing, while udana, which is responsible for speech and singing, causes disorders above the collarbone. Another Vedic source refers to arthritic diseases as wind blood. The Vedic context gives a fuller picture to understanding the use of breath in Lithuanian verbal healing charms. Lithuanian folk healers resemble ascetics called vratayas, who are known for their breath control, pranayama. The fundamental activities in ascetic breath control are inhalation, prana, exhalation, apana, and retention, vayana. Each of these are further broken down and they have macrocosmic correspondences. The microcosmic physical level is located in the body, the macrocosmic level, the natural world, the religious level focuses on the worship of the wind. Such homologous correspondences relating the human body to the earth body, cosmic body, are characteristic of indigenous worldviews. The acceleration of winds. Indigenous wisdom draws attention to the winds as powerful cosmic agents. Usually modern Western humans pay attention to the winds only when it pleases them, as a breeze on a hot summer day, or when it greatly inconveniences them on a windy day. The Native American Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address articulates the important functions of the winds. The four winds. We are all thankful to the powers we know as the four winds. We hear their voices in the moving air as they refresh us and purify the air we breathe. They help us to bring the change of seasons. From the four directions they come, bringing us messages and giving us strength. With one mind, we send our greetings and thanks to the four winds. Lithuanian breath-soul-wind homology resonates with Onondaga faith keepers Oren Lyon's prophetic warning about the acceleration of winds as one of the signs of degradation of the earth. Quote, "We were told that the winds would accelerate and continue to accelerate. When you see the acceleration of the winds are growing, then you are in dangerous times," end of quote. Following the logic of soul breath wind homology, in the context of this prophecy, one may argue that the living earth body is healing itself with its accelerated winds. These accelerated winds are stirring what historian of religion Charles H. Long calls the soul stuff of the earth as the biggest living being. Breath, like wind, has the power to erase Western epistemological boundaries between matter and spirit. For the West, there is an ontological opposition between spirit and matter. This opposition implies that spirits are immaterial. Their substance is breath, most invisible in the visible, most immaterial in the material. Spiritual existence is understood as the existence of an animating principle without a body or outside body. While honoring the life work of Charles Long, Ilana Jefferson Tatum articulates the present crisis of materiality through present tripartite pandemic of systemic racism, environmental destruction, and COVID-19. Quote, "I can't breathe. Are these the final words and testament of Black, Brown, and Indigenous peoples who have for too long had white supremacist institutions and their various allies both literally and metaphorically kneeling on their necks? I can't breathe. Are these also solemn words and thoughts of those suffering and dying from COVID-19, a disproportionate number of whom are Black, Brown, and Indigenous, and whom suffer systemic social inequalities? I can't breathe. Are these too the muted utterances of the forests, the rivers, the oceans, the lakes, and the lands that many have pillaged and raped for resources and wealth, but at the expense of the health and well-being of the earth and all its human and non-human persons?" End of quote. The Lithuanian Baltic pantheon had a number of wind deities: Vėjapatis, Vėjas, Vėjapatis, Bangputis. 4 winds were directional: šiaurys, north wind; pietys, south wind; rytvėjas, east wind; vakaris, west wind. Seamen and farmers alike revered these spirits. In Lithuanian oral tradition, it is typical for the god of the dead Vėjas, souls of the dead Vėjas, and other spirits to travel in a form of a whirlwind. More Vedic context. The Vedic context offers more insight into soul, breath, wind homology. Since Rigveda dedicated sacred hymns to the storm gods Maruts, who are brilliant, of terrific forms, who are the possessors of great wealth, are devourers of the malevolent, come Agni, fire, with the Maruts, storm gods, who scatter the clouds and agitate the sea with waves, come Agni, fire, with the Maruts, storm gods. The musical aspect of hymns adds another layer to understanding the connection between human breath and atmospheric wind. Breathing and singing intensifies breath as if mimicking nature's winds. And some of the healing charms were also performed with some kind of musical accompaniment. The earliest written ancient Indian texts called Rigveda indicate that Indians conceived atmospheric winds and breath that animates all living beings to be one and the same thing imbued with life-giving powers. Two Vedic world creation hymns can connect nature's wind to the primal cosmic beings, being Purusha's breath resulting from his sacrifice. In primordial time, before the existence of wind and breath, before the existence of duality of spirit and matter, then even nothingness was not, nor existence. There was no air then, nor the heavens beyond it. What covered it? Where was it? In whose keeping? Was there then cosmic waters in depths unfathomed? Then there was neither death or immortality, nor was there then the torch of night and day. The one breathed mindlessly and self-sustaining. There was that one then, and there was no other. Invoking fire and wind. This is from the Vedic hymns to the winds. In the Vedic hymns to the storm gods Maruts, Agni, the god of fire, and the Maruts, storm gods, are often invoked together. Reading these verses resonates with the outbreak of frequent wildlife fires and intensified storms we experience today. Agni, the god of fire, is frequently invoked together with the Maruts, storm gods, and is often called Marut Saka, the friend of the Maruts. Earnestly art thou invoked to this perfect right to drink the Soma juice, come Agni with the Maruts. No god nor man has power over right, dedicated to thee, who art mighty, come Agni with the Maruts. Give to the Maruts gifts rich in cattle. So to conclude my presentation, I want to leave it really open-ended because this is still work in progress, but I have some open-ended questions. Have humans lost touch with the gods of fires and storms? Does the acceleration of winds imply that there is a religious need to invoke them? Is the biggest living body, the earth, healing itself through accelerated winds? And I do like the image of the largest living body, earth, healing itself through accelerated winds and rearranging things. Thank you all for listening, and Thank you really for having me. And thanks to my friend Ellen Cutler for editing this presentation to a manageable size because it was going out. And thanks to Leah Ulansi for reading. And thank you, Tristan and Peter, for hosting and for having me, and to everybody who is here. And thank you to Maris Chapulis for gorgeous photos that he allowed me to share.
And thank you, Eglute, for this wonderful presentation. It was amazing. And so we have a couple of questions in the audience, and I have a couple of questions also for you. Can you talk a little bit more about your methodology? Like, how have you discovered all of this?
It's an excellent question, Tristan. And I have to say that it took years and years of reading primary sources in Lithuanian. And it also took years of my familiarity with some of Hinduism, because as an undergraduate at Hunter College, I took Hinduism, just a course from Robert Casey Foreman. And so I noticed the similarities I noticed linguistic similarities, excuse me, between Lithuanian and Sanskrit. And also, this is very well known that Lithuanian is the closest living language to Sanskrit, and it's being studied formally at university level by linguists. So that allowed me to make connections, and of course, the history of religions method of studying at Syracuse University. With Philip Arnold and other teachers, and Charles Long as a mentor, as an ancestor to all of us. And so kind of things coalesced over time, I would say. And also I have in the field experience with visiting these verbal charm healers, or traditional healers who use these verbal charms. And first, I think I visited them as a patient because when I was a teenager, I had a kind of a neurodermitis, a skin condition that was very upsetting to me. And when dermatologists would not be able to give any answers, or offer one cream after another, usually people go to these folk healers when traditional modern medicine methods fail. So I've been to a couple of these folk healers. They were on my radar. And I even physically, like, my body remembers the hands of a male folk healer on my head. And, he was also a farmer. So I remember the smell of earth and animals and hay. He had like the kind of hands that work the land. They were like full of the land. And he charmed me. And I brought home, I think, some salt that he charmed, and I was to put that salt in the water and drink some. And I could not go outside after drinking that salt, or put that salty water, or putting that salty water on my rash. And so there was this kind of like boundary between the inside and outside, right? So that the winds could not blow off the charmed substance.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when I came, when I studied religion for many years at Hunter College and then at Syracuse University on a graduate level, and I would go back home to Lithuania, and then I had a professional lens. And so I would visit these healers with my Lithuanian colleagues. And it was a whole other level of witnessing their work or their practice. And I was able then to see the layers, to see the indigenous oral tradition, and then to see the Roman Catholic layer, adding the Hail Marys.
Yeah. And if I may ask, so is this something that's fairly common in Lithuanian culture to go
Yeah.
see charm healers. And also, so you talked about your experience as a teenager, as a kid. Um, uh, were you able to interview them when you came back as an adult with, of course, the professional background that you had? And what did you ask? What did you want to know?
Oh, it's a great question. Thank you, Tristan. So yes, I actually had an honor of participating in one of the ethnographic field trips
Yeah.
with two colleagues from Lithuania in 2014. So I did another presentation earlier, a few years earlier, that was about that interview, and we visited two healers in person, and one was incredibly generous with information, and when we visited her in her home, she hosted us for the entire day. And I went kind of like under kind of two functions, one as a patient and one as a historian of religion who was interested in researching. And it was very informal, very casual. And she gave me these healing formulas. She was so generous. She said that they were passed down through her matrilineal line, through her family line, through her mother, because normally that's passed down through women, but also it can be passed down through males. It's just that they will pass it down to the firstborn. And because I'm firstborn in my family, I told her I'm firstborn. And she gave me a piece of paper with the formula written in kind of like Polishized Lithuanian, because of the history of Lithuanian Poland, people sometimes used Polish letters.
Yeah.
And I still have a screenshot and a picture of that. So that would be like a separate presentation, because also I have a picture of this woman.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that visit was just magical, Tristan, because it ended up not only sharing of the healing formulas and telling her life story as a healer, and how the village ladies reported her to the priest for practicing witchcraft because they were jealous, and how the priest asked her, so what is it that you practice that these women told on you that you're practicing witchcraft? And once she told the priest what it is exactly that she was saying with these healing charms, which is just basically saying sweet words to the snake in the forest, that the snake would not bite her, and then adding Hail Marys on top of it, the priest said, it's fine, you're fine. It's not witchcraft. As long as you say Hail Marys, it's fine.
Okay.
So, and then, she made us borscht soup, beet soup. Meanwhile, while she was entertaining us, she sold some contraband cigarettes for somebody who came through the door, because the village is right on the border of Belarus. So there was a lot of that. And then she fired up a bathhouse, a traditional bathhouse, and we went into a bathhouse. But the best part of that day was that she brought a bottle with a snake in it, which was a snake medicine that these healers use, or country healers use, for healing animals and humans. So it's basically, when her husband was working in the fields, saw a snake, brought the snake home, and then they put the snake in a bottle and pour alcohol over it, and the snake is kind of embalmed. And that medicine was like 20 or 30 years old, and it smelled like snake. And I still have some somewhere. I brought some home.
Okay.
And it was such an adventure,
How do people find those healers? I mean, it seems like from what you're telling us that they are mostly located in small villages, like rural areas. I mean, can people find them in cities?
You know, most of them are in villages, but yes, they can also be found in urban settings.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
But
And can I just say, there's one thing that really resonated with me here in your presentation. It's then when you make the connection between the ecology, racism, health, and to see that all of this was already present, you know, in that culture. Because to me, like it's everything is it's very obvious. I mean, all of this is very obvious. It's not obvious to everybody, but once we take care of the ecology, of course, we take care of racism. Of course, we take care of health, and that it's all connected, you know. That was the connection was beautiful here. So thank you so much, Eglute. We have a couple of questions from the audience that I want to read to you. A question from Philip. Is there a relationship between the healing practices that you describe and environmental healing?
oh, absolutely. This is a question from Philip Arnold.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Philip Arnold, thank you for being here. Philip Arnold is my teacher and my mentor and my good friend. And I'm very grateful for everything that I learned from him. And so I have to also give him credit to Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address, because he's the one who exposed me to that culture. Absolutely. There is a connection between healing the environment, because the environment and humans are not separate. And so the breath, the human breath is directly connected to the cosmic winds, as my presentation made it clear. And absolutely, I think that everything needs to be seen in a holistic context, right? And I think that other questions I have at the end, actually, after doing this work and making these connections, I see the winds, you know, as yes, uncomfortable to human anthropocentrism and even damaging, but I see them as healing winds that are kind of reshuffling, changing, reordering the cosmos and the social order as well. And so, yes, everything is intricately connected.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's amazing that we talk about eco-racism, now we talk about eco-feminism, but it was amazing to me that to see that all of this was already present there, right? So this is something that I didn't know. A question from Ellen. Is there something atavistic about this engagement with breath, wind, and fire? Is there a connection between the indigenous peoples of North America, pre-Christian Lithuania, and the Hindu peoples of India?
Thank you, Ellen, for a great question. So I hope I'm reading the word atavistic as primal. Is that, can we clarify that? I think I'm reading it as primal. That's, or maybe I'm not very familiar with the word atavistic, so I'm just going to read it as primal. Is that good reading? I hope so. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we are, in a way, I think the winds, the cosmic winds, are going to encourage more of intercultural connecting and going beyond the national borders, because I see these connections in different indigenous traditions in you know, as I just looked at the Vedic texts, and I see connections to Haudenosaunee Thanksgiving address, acknowledging the winds and paying attention and the love that the winds deserve. And then reading these ancient Baltic Lithuanian pre-Christian texts shows the richness of human imagination, linguistic, religious imagination, in talking about the winds, the variety of the winds. There were sort of like wind specialist experts, wind readers, you know. I wonder like how much we have lost, you know, by homogenizing winds, or say scientifically objectifying the winds, you know, using technology and just not really paying attention to the winds as well as the breath. You know, sometimes Most humans are not conscious of breath. It's just a function that we take for granted. But nothing made us more conscious of breath as COVID did. Or the racism that we witnessed in the last couple of years. I can't breathe, you know? It's the kind of suffocation. It's a cosmic suffocation, but it's on the social level too, health level.
Eglute, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation and for everything that you shared with us. Not only the presentation, but also the stories that you shared about your research, about going to those healers in Lithuania. That was very enlightening. That was very interesting to me. So Eglute, thank you so much. Thank you to the attendees for coming tonight. Our next event is actually scheduled on November 3rd, and we have an historian, Mary Fergal, who teaches the history of England in our program, and she will present a talk on poverty and poor relief in industrializing society. So it's on November 3rd at 6 p.m. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Eglute, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Tristan, Peter, for hosting me. Real pleasure. Thank you all. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
I don't know if the